So what nights would you like to not sleep and continue? Yeah, you said it. Okay.
I know I've got a lot. I know I've got a lot to say. The challenge. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Joe, Dr. Energy Piazza.
Rara is in the house. Catherine Sarah Myers.
Welcome back to BU Network Podcast, Conversations Worth Having. On our podcast, you can expect three things. 1, the BU guest moment. 2, the BU moment. And 3, the BU final moment.
As promised, we are giving you a very special audible on each show. Your job, well, not your job, it's to find it. You know the game Where's Waldo? Well, here we will ask you to listen for that audible. Talk about a good episode, huh?
I can't wait. This is going to be awesome.
There's also something about Homer's steady, stable, very sultry voice. What do you think about that?
There's a lot
I know I'm asking a man about a man.
That's okay, but his voice is really good. He projects, what's the word I'm looking for? Like solidity, like there's substance. There's substance there. And I'm sure that comes across with his clients. And I know it comes across in his podcast because I've listened to an episode or two of his podcast, Homer-on-Olympus, it's quite an interesting take.
Isn't it? I really enjoy listening to Homer, and I was so excited that this is a first for us on so many levels. And having this episode and Homer and sharing what he's doing and how he's doing it, he gives some really good depth about the process of what he's doing. His audience and his clientele are getting so much value.
Yes.
When they get with him.
And
so
go ahead.
He's at 20 episodes, right?
Right.
So 20 episodes in from the time that, let's see 20 episodes from now, like look at the famous one that he's going to have. I'm so glad we're part of this with him.
Well, 20 episodes for us from now is going to be somewhere around episode 100. So that's exciting right. Too for us.
Okay, so we're going to have another milestone for us, and that'll be another milestone for Homer, because every 10 episodes, right? We were counting by tens, and we got to 50, we get to 100. So it's really awesome. I was listening to Todd Falcone the other day, and he was like, episode 138, and I thought, cool. Let's catch up to, the icons in podcasting.
I want to catch up to, and I don't know how, we'd have to publish a lot more episodes, is there's somebody in the guild, Joseph Clough, who does hypnosis, and there's some free hypnosis sessions that he does on his YouTube channel. He's at episode 500 and something, I think, for his podcast. Now he goes live 3 times a week and then turns those all into podcasts. So he's got his process down, and I really like how he clips that middle section for a podcast and then does another one. It's very cool.
So what nights would you like to not sleep and continue? Yeah, you said it. Okay.
I know I've got a lot to say. The challenge is actually to keep it to 25 to 30 minutes per episode. Right. So we'd have to have like several, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Episodes, like carry on episodes. So there'd be like to be continued in episode number 85, and then to be continued in episode number 86. And it'd be next thing you know, we're 10 episodes down and they're all follow on episodes. It's just like, okay, we need to wrap this sucker up and start something else.
Well, we can do our BU network retreats, get together for 3 days and just talk for 3 days and call it a business
record it all.
Right. Yeah. We had a lot of fun today, and Homer was just an amazing guest. And I love what we did at the end of the episode for our audience to catch him again live, and to, this is a audio only, but what our guests are going to find out today is we have a surprise for you. So hang in till the end and keep your eyes open, not only your ears.
Yes, exactly. I think that's awesome. A fun little addition and tweak to our podcast going forward. It's going to provide some more value to our guests and to our audience as well. I'm hoping. If it doesn't, I'm sure our audience will tell us.
In the meantime, we piloted this with Homer today.
Exactly.
Onward and upward, as Jordan Adler would say.
And speaking of piloting, would you like to fly on over and have our conversation with Homer?
Absolutely. Let's go there.
All right. We'll see you on the other side.
Ciao. Be you, study.
Be more at ease in your communication so you too can have conversations worth having. What is Be You Study? A private, online room to rehearse impromptu speaking, receive instant feedback and achieve quick results, and feel confident that no one is laughing, unless you're telling a joke.
Plug in anytime, anywhere. Study with seasoned pros. Access your customized feedback. Then speak with ease and build amazing relationships. Dr. Energy, you're in the house.
We are in the house between two Sicilians again.
That makes me laugh. It goes along with what we made for dinner last night, a very Sicilian episode. We went to the garden, we picked the food, we came in the house, we made dinner. I felt like a real grounded Sicilian woman going to the garden, coming in the house and making the food.
Like your grandparents, right? We all had grandparents that had great-grandparents that had gardens in the backyard, right? Took up the whole yard. Fresh basil, oregano, tomatoes, lettuce, beans, right? Yeah.
Well, my family had cement in the backyard. It was wall to wall.
But I bet you they were out there with the hose, right? Hosing it down.
Oh, don't you know it? I am too. I mean, this is in our DNA. We just cannot let go of those habits. I watch children and they mimic their parents, as we have. If you see me with the hose in my hand, because the driveway has to be cleaned before you drive on it and walk on the patio, which has to be cleaned.
Well, it cools the patio down a little bit too. So
it definitely does. So between two Sicilians, it's just in another world, all of its own. And I'm really excited to have one of our friends here today between us. We'll have to ask him what it feels like.
Would you like to introduce Homer?
Yes, absolutely. I will.
Yeah, I think we should get going. I'm excited for this.
All right, let's get going. There are many interests and creative concepts S.J. Homer desires to produce and share with the world. And Homosapient is that vehicle. The idea for Homosapient was a play on words of his notable and badass last name, Homer, and the term sapient denoting the wisdom he could capture and distill across his many interests. The play on words further relating to Homosapien, the name of our species, such that any of his works produced would have some impact on how to look at life a little differently. And if he could give back and help his fellow humans in a world filled with a bit too much negativism. I love that word, negativism. Let me tell you about Homer.
Mm-hmm.
He's deep. And I just love having conversations with him. And I think our audience today is going to be in for a major treat. Homer, welcome to Be You Network Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, welcome.
What I just read is awesome. And I just want to know a little bit more, have our audience know a little bit more about you. How would you describe yourself other than being a product of a badass?
I would say that I'm just a culmination of different hobbies that have kind of melded together over the years. It's coming from school where I had trouble comprehension reading and basically discarding all English classes to a point where I decided I wanted to become a writer, which is still a long and laborious in progress thing. That's transformed with music and now voice work and all these things that have just culminated into the creative things that I began this year with my own podcast and audio drama that's reflecting it, looking at the world and the state of things, and just finding ways to express myself that, take those different hobbies and interests and kind of put it out there to the world.
Well, let's talk about the voice work that caught my attention. I'm sure our audience is going
absolutely.
to wonder about that, right, Joe? Caught
Yeah,
yours
absolutely.
too, right?
Of course.
Yeah, so I began this probably because of singing, I would say. So I sang in choir as a kid, and I loved it. Truly just, passion and joy of being able to sing until my voice broke. So when I hit puberty and that happened, I kind of gave up on it because I assumed I'd never really be able to sing that same way. I was, clearly like as a kid, a soprano. And in my early 20s, I just got to a point where it's like home alone, just doing the dishes. And I was trying to sing some songs just to myself, just for the heck of it. And wasn't arguably that good because it'd been definitely about a decade since I gave it any real thought. And over time, I just pushed myself and started singing more. I taught myself how to sing and play the guitar, and played guitar since I was a teenager, but never knew how to play and sing. And I kind of forced myself into that, and eventually got into singing a wide variety of songs, including some things like metal, which is something I loved, and thought there's no way I could ever sing that and have that capability. And eventually I worked my way into it and had a singing trainer. So, I'd been doing that on and off for about, 15 years, I would say. And I'd always have an interest in using my voice. And, this is still from a kid who was shy and, in early days in school, wouldn't even stand up in front of the class with confidence and speak, presenting something. But just the culmination of things again, and with singing, I had this desire to do some voice acting and to use my voice to express different things and to act out characters. And in person, I'm pretty laid back and a pretty straight and narrow guy, as my wife would say. And it was a way for me to kind of play around and see what I could do again, similar to how the singing started, where what if, right? And it really kicked off in the fall. We're going through a pandemic. There's a lot of chance to explore new hobbies and new interests. And finally just sat down thinking like, what if I try this again? And no real expectations, but the first results and the first efforts I did were very promising. And I just started going from there and kind of playing around with the idea until I landed on this podcast idea. And the reason why it's even possible as well is because of my music interest in the past, that I have some sound engineering experience. So I was able to blend that in and be able to produce some very diverse, unique voices on top of my acting aspect of it to create quite a wide cast of characters. I think I'm voicing about 8 or 9 characters in the podcast right now. So definitely lots to play with and have fun with.
That must keep you busy trying to keep track of all of those characters in a podcast, moving from one to one and knowing which one you have to speak in next.
Yeah, it's once I develop them well enough, it's, you kind of have a mental imprint. And I can even, because I write the scripts as well, right, for the episodes, I kind of almost hear their voice as I'm like writing it. So I can actually envision as I'm writing specific dialogue to try and think, would they say these words in such a way or not? Maybe I'll change the words because it wouldn't sound good or so. Yeah, it's definitely an exercise. And sometimes I do have to play back and like listen as a reference to remember. But some of the core ones I started with, I can just do them on command now.
That's cool. It's you can definitely one of those few people who can say they've put the voices in their head to good use.
Absolutely.
Is that where the chatter really pays off? Homer, do you wake up in the middle of the night and just imagine that voice and go running to your studio and start recording?
So I usually don't wake up in the night, but sometimes I do have trouble falling asleep and basically start at least outlining a script that's came to mind. And, I've been working on weekly episodes now since February. And there's only 1 week that I took a pause on since. And I've gotten the process down to give or take about 6 hours. And that's coming up with the script, doing the recording, polishing, releasing to social medias and all that. So definitely fine tuning a bit as I've gone along. But yeah, when the ideas come, it's not always, when you want.
Right.
I'd like to, be able to say I could just go to sleep some nights, but if the idea is there, I'm just at least going to write it down and capture it for the next day.
Right.
But I'm even playing it through my head too. Like I'm actually hearing the voices as if I was recording it and trying to kind of like bounce these characters off each other to see how they would respond.
We've heard that from other guests as well that have talked about, that have podcasts and or that are creatives, and how that when those ideas start coming, you just gotta keep up with them and fine tune your process, the creative process, as you go, because as you know, at the beginning it takes a lot. It probably took you close to double the 6 hours to do an episode from start to finish compared to what it does now. Yeah.
And another thing I'd say is it still takes that effort of sitting down with intentionally doing it, because I still sit down and feel like I have like a bit of a block, and it's like, okay, what am I going to write? And just to kind of explain it a bit more in the process, this is a weekly thing where I sit down and I plan the next episode. I have no idea where it's going. So this is a complete opposite of all my attempts of writing novels, where I sat down, overanalyzed, thought all these outlines, thought all these lines, thought all these characters, and I've never written a book. So, I figured this is going to be a completely different process where it's a living thing that just changes. And so when I first sit down, it does definitely take a few minutes for things to get going. But as soon as I have an idea, I latch onto just by sitting there now and giving myself the time to say, I have to work on this. It opens up the doors and just things start expanding. And I start off with what seems like a simple idea. And I'm like, oh, but I talked about this, 2 or 3 episodes ago. Let's bring that, make it sound like I knew what I was talking about. It's worked out really well. Like the storyline, in the fictional sense, has come together quite amazingly.
Wow.
I'm looking at your first episode on February 28th. Zeus's hot take on 2020. Can you tell us a little bit about episode 1, 17 minutes and 13 seconds, all the way to the most recent published episode, July 18th, Keep Your Enemies Closer, 13 minutes and 10 seconds. Tell us what happened between February 28th and July 18th in terms of creating this episode. And February 28th is such a special day to me in my life. I won't forget that. That would have been my mom's birthday. So share with our audience, here you are doing these once a week. What's the process? Episode 1 to episode, whatever the number is on July 18th. You tell me what number is that?
20.
Okay.
Yeah, just released episode 20.
So in those 20 episodes, to people who are listening right now, to our audience who's thinking, yeah, I'm at episode 4, I'm at episode 18, I'm at episode 19. Am I going to keep going? I'm going to quit. It's 20. It's too much. Share with us what your journey was like.
Yeah. So, for the longest time, I've wanted to put a lot of things out there, ideas about the world, the way we're looking at things. And, through the pandemic, there's definitely been a lot of struggles. And, the word negativism that you caught there, there's just too much of that I find going on, and people with bad intention or distractions just getting you caught up in things that don't help anyone. And this was a chance to finally, instead of write a trilogy and lace these crazy plots that people are going to finally hinge on and get after they read the novels, I can just say it. And it started off as kind of more of a joke exercise that I was trying to explore these voices, and I was saying things like in Zeus's voice I was saying like, well, humanity, you screwed up, so yeah, it seems like you're done, and things along those lines, which made me start to just question like, okay, what is this simulation if we had these gods alive right now looking down and our kind of state of the world and what we've put ourselves in. And it's a very uncomfortable podcast, I would say. I've had some people listen to it and they love it, but they're like, I can't listen to it because it's too real, as fictional as it is. And over time, since there's been definitely some topics that I've laced in that are very current and very relevant, and even though this is a fiction, because it's weekly and unplanned, I have that chance to reorient and change the direction and kind of tie things in. And there's still kind of like this growing narrative of the actual or story aspect to it. And I find, for good fiction, you still need it to be entertaining. But then I bring in things like I've touched on racism. I've touched on things about the Indigenous and how Canada's dealing with that, and other aspects around environmentalism and how we're struggling, as a race to kind of get through these things and come out the other side. So it's been, an exercise of just passion initially, and then it's something that I just feel I need to do at this point from when I first released. And technically that first release was already done. I had about 3 episodes lined up ahead of time. Now I'm a little more off the cuff and getting it out there, but I'm still definitely enjoying it and having fun.
That's a key element, to have fun.
Yes.
And you had, this is not your first time creating, organizing a podcast.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
let's want to talk a little bit about your commitments that you've had prior to this, which I know the format was a little bit different, but maybe you would call it a mastermind one, because this was something I had the pleasure of being invited on. So I'm really excited that I happen to be part of that as well. You want to share how that happened? And I know you're doing that for a long time.
Yeah. So there's a group that we run voluntarily. It's called the Evergrowth Mastermind. And it started now about 3.5 years ago. And it was the sort of rebirth of a former group that was a bit more of a business networking group. And we started this as a group just to get together and talk about things. And it didn't really have a lot of form, I would say, the first year. But by the second year, we kind of sat down, the core members who are running it, and thought, okay, how do we make this useful for people to come have a very organic, relaxed conversation about topics you wouldn't normally talk about or get into as deep as we do. And we allocate a 2-hour time span. And, we found a way to kind of give a space where whatever the topic is, we get a diverse group of people to share their, perspectives on this. And the conversation just grows as we talk and go deeper. And, guests from any background, male, female, any profession, and just kind of exploring this topic. And some of them have been very grounded and, very relatable. And some have been a bit more abstract and still finding ways to how is this relevant to us, and, why we should care about these things. And all of them have some impact on our life in some way. For instance, the most recent one was looking at kind of capitalism and, how to be a critical thinker in the modern day, because there's many things that are taking place that if you're not paying attention, you or your family might not be as safe otherwise if, kind of not giving it critical thought. And then we're going to be talking about food and farming industry practices in the next talk. And we have things on health, we have it on wealth, and, all these different things, so much that the group has helped me just by running it to really develop, myself better, and with my voice and being able to lead and speak in a different way that, as you were able to participate in Rara, how to kind of mold a talk and have it pass between different people, but still make it cohesive. Definitely something that I didn't have before this, and thankfully was able to kind of, figure out and learn throughout the process.
You have some amazing people and personalities and contributions on your mastermind. And I'm so honored that I had the opportunity to converse and be part of that. I wonder if our audience is thinking, I don't know if the word blooper is the right word, Dr. Energy, but
I know what you mean. Yep.
When we're creating, so Homer, when we're creating our podcasts and we're doing the editing and we're creating the content, is there something that comes to mind that just makes you laugh and you think, oh, I can't believe that happened to me?
Like during the podcast of
Yeah, during
or
the
the mastermind.
let's talk. Okay, that's a good point. Let's talk about the mastermind because there are so many people, and then we'll go over to the podcast because there might be some new podcasters listening to us. So with the
Mm.
mastermind, because that's in real time, right? That you've got like real life things going on right
Yes.
then and there.
So the
Real life
bloopers
is
would
messy.
be of like connection problems. So you're either like, so gonna go over to this person now, and they start speaking, and they're like, we can't hear you, and or you're on mute, right? You're muted. The infamous
Yeah.
connection remote meetings now, right? So there's definitely some gotchas, but it's also raw. Like we keep it organic, so that's life, right? Things aren't perfect.
Right.
But in terms of the Homer-on-Olympus podcast, definitely some bloopers, and I've saved the odd little clip here and there where I just go, I completely mess up a line and just run with it and be silly or stupid about it. So yeah, there's lots of little outtakes that I started doing, and an interesting thing that I chose to do up front with that comes to mind about the bloopers is I don't swear in the podcast, and it's a more mature the topics and content, I'd say a little are mature as far as what I'm dealing with in the talks, but
For sure.
I purposely chose not to swear because I want it to be available to a wider audience, and eventually children and teenagers who can, you know, take from it what they will and not
Right.
have to deal with that kind of stuff. And not to say that, with my personality and humor, dark humor, I could definitely have gone that route. Absolutely. But I just made a conscious choice to say, this doesn't need that to be successful or to have that as an angle to draw people in. I can manage the story and make it effective without that. But my bloopers will definitely have the odd swearing here and there of just things are getting silly. So
And that's such a great lesson for people listening if they're thinking of starting a podcast or creating content, is being intentional about it. Like, what is knowing the audience that you want to deliver to, and maybe what is the halo audience around that, and being able to deliver it in a way that'll be accessible. We made the same choice to not swear. Now, that's not to say that we don't swear in our real life, out and about in the world, because I know I certainly do. But it's definitely something that we made a choice to do so that we could, again, reach that wider audience, like you're saying.
Yeah. And, especially in adult content, like there's a benefit sometimes to swear, and
Of course.
you do evoke certain things. And when you can swear intelligently,
Yes.
it does add some emphasis. But if it's just there as part of a bit of a gimmick, to extend it, I don't think it brings value. So
I agree. And I think that, that is some of the genius of some of the comics out there who don't swear and are as big and as popular as they are. I'm thinking, Jerry Seinfeld for one, or, Sebastian Maniscalco and some of those guys, Jim Gaffigan, they don't swear and they're hilarious.
Yeah.
One of my favorite people, Sebastian.
Yes, I know. That's why I mentioned him.
I was like, I don't want to interrupt you.
Another Italian.
When you say his name, I just grin from ear to ear because everything he talks about is like our life, right?
Yeah.
Like, is he talking to us about our family?
Yeah.
Just we can relate to him. Homer, let's talk about. I love to talk about the present because that's where we're in, and I appreciate that. And how is it going for you? So, thank you for sharing this. But how is it going on your end? Like, we know how we feel. We do reality checks in BU Network. Sometimes we're smiling, and sometimes we're like, okay, we're taking out
cursing and swearing.
Yeah. We're looking at what we got to do. How is it going? And who do you talk to about how is it going?
Yeah. So I definitely say I'm in a very good place in life. That's not to say that I don't have constant struggles and a lot of swearing during the day. I'm basically a director at a web firm in downtown Toronto, working remotely out of my home in St. Catharines, which has been a blessing. So I'm very fortunate for the things that I have, and I'm always trying to look to what the future is and how to give my wife and I and our cats, kind of the best that we can get. And the the common struggles I'd say I deal with are just things around, making time for things like fitness and eating better, and being able to have a way to still spend time with friends and family. So I'm very fortunate and recognize the privilege I have in being able to do the things that I'm doing. And this is why, specifically the podcast was kind of putting content out there that can eventually help people and give them new ways of thinking and ways to appreciate, hopefully, their life, and find ways to help each other more than just kind of sitting around and, just when things open up and this pandemic starts to wane, that everyone just goes back to that quote unquote normal status quo, which I'm very not, not looking forward to that, just going back to the way things are. It's like, how do we do better from this and improve?
I agree so much. And I don't think we're going to go back to the way things were before. I think there's going to be some changes. What those changes are going to be, I don't know. And I think that we need to be really cognizant and aware of and awake to move through these changes with a little bit more awareness of just exactly what experience we're going through, how we want to create the world. One of the phrases that I hate the most out there is everybody's talking about, oh, it's the new normal. It's not this. None of this is normal. And this is all about, we need to learn to adapt and go with it and create the future, the present that we want to experience. So I agree that things are going to change, and I really don't think we're going to go back to the way things were. And that's my prayer, is that I hope we don't.
Yeah, I mean, right now in Ag region here, we're basically sitting under smoke from the northern fires in Ontario.
Yep.
And that's not normal. These are changes and things that much more extreme than in all the years that I grew up here in Canada that we've been experiencing. So
exactly,
we're being smoked out here.
Yeah. We have, even here in Ottawa, we have a air quality warning because of those fires. So
yeah.
There's so many things that we can talk about, and I think you're a genius, Homer. I love what you write. I love your podcast. You know that. I'm a huge fan, and I can feel amazing things in the future for you. I'm so happy that we're able to have you here with us when you're on your 20th episode, because 20 episodes from now, who knows, you're going to be talking to people that are all over the world, and you're going to remember that you were here with us, man. Don't forget where it started with us, right? And it started before us, but let this be a highlight, because it certainly is. It is for me, and it is for BU Network to have you here. And there's a part of our, you're welcome. There's a part of, do you have any questions for us before we go into our BU final moment?
I would say, given your different backgrounds, what does talking about these kind of things, and as Dr. Energy mentioned that he doesn't feel they're going to go back to normal, how has that changed in your lives and affected your families?
Dr. Energy?
Ladies first.
Okay, awesome. So I hear like a few parts to that question. So I'm just going to pick the part. How does it affect our families? Let's talk about that.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm a rebel, so I'm here in Canada. No, oh, okay, you don't want me to go that far back. Yeah, I'm from New York, so I'm here in Canada, and my family is here. My daughter is here, and her family. My stepsons are here, and their family. So that's my immediate family. We're all in the same place. So that's one aspect. How things affect us, how this affects us, it was pretty, I don't know, scary, sad, lonely. We moved out. We call this our COVID house. We took about 6 weeks to observe what was going on in the city. And we just picked up and moved. We just said, we don't like what we're seeing. We lived in a building that had yellow tape in the lobby, everything shut down, recreation rooms, elevators weren't the same. And we thought, well, I don't think we want to live in this crime scene. That's how it felt. It felt like we were living in a crime scene. So we came out here and we created a new reality for ourselves. And we basically started to live like we are right now. You know how that is. And for us, I guess that was our escapism. That's how we dealt with it, Dr. Energy.
Some good points there. I live here in Ottawa by myself, so that has been, and I'm a pretty extroverted person. Now, it doesn't mean I need to be out talking to people all the time, but I need to be out and around people at the very least. So it's been a challenge that way. My family lives in Waterloo, for the most part. My brother lives in Florida, and my sister has 4 kids. My brother has 2, and it's been a different experience for both. My sister, with her kids, they have friends that basically were their family. They live next door to each other and they're at each other's houses constantly. So that part of things didn't really change that much because they were always with each other anyway. So they were like their own little bubble. The big thing was for the kids was seeing their friends from school that they couldn't see, and the social aspect has been challenging for them. So for me, the big thing has been seeing how it has affected my nieces and nephew, and really being concerned for the future for them. For me, I'm not so worried about myself. I'm an adult. I can make the decisions for myself. But for the kids, and I have other friends with young children as well, I'm concerned for them and what the long lasting effects are going to be for them and on their psychological, emotional well-being. Yes, kids are adaptable and all of that, and I'm still concerned. And on the flip side, I still was able to see them and hang out with them and do things with them and see videos of them in their activities. And so I'm also hopeful because the kids, they're still able to laugh, they're still able to have fun. And to me, that is the biggest thing, seeing the smiles and the laughs
magical thing
from the kids.
For kids to for me, be able to engage and, kind of play with each other. That's what we lose, the magic of adults. We don't play the way kids can play and just meet, a new kid and you just play and there's no hesitation.
That was a great question.
That's why
Dr.
we have
Energy. You're a bit of a kid.
Well, I was going to say this is why we all have podcasts, is so that we can play.
Yeah, I was skipping rope a few days ago. So yeah, but I understand. We definitely understand what you mean. And I think that was a great question. Thank you for that question, and really that trip down being a kid. That's a good reminder. Let's play every day, because we don't want to leave that part. Fun is a key element for us here, for us here at BU Network, for Dr. Energy and I, singularly, individually, and as a rule of thumb, if we're not having fun, we're probably not going to be doing it too long. I think that's just how we roll, right?
Absolutely.
Well, let's go into the part of our show which we call our BU Final Moment. And to our audience who might be listening for the first time, this is where we'll talk about what has come up for you, on the spot. So Homer, I'd like to ask you to share with us what has come up for you. And then Dr. Energy, maybe you can share after that. What's come up for you today in our BU Network Conversations Worth Having?
Yeah, just you reading back the snippet that I gave you for my intro. I forgot how well written it was. I'm often too modest of my own work and appreciate, some of the raw talent I have. And hearing it back was just a good reminder that, I can put my talents to good use, and that this is, the start of many doors opening.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to read that to our audience and to you. You have amazing talent. And we're so honored to be here sharing this moment with you. Dr. Energy, I'm laughing because I'm looking at your Zoom picture and you crack me up all
Speaking
the
of
time.
playing and having fun.
Yeah, there you are. You and your fun come into the room.
Yeah.
What is your final moment for today?
Well, before I go right into the final moment, I'd just like to say I can't wait to, because I've started listening to the Homer-on-Olympus podcast last night, and I can't wait to share it with my 17-year-old niece, because she's really into all of the gods of Olympus and history and mythology and all of that kind of thing. So I think this is something, and the fact that it ties in what's happening in the world, I think it's going to be, she'll really, really enjoy it just for the place that she's in right now. My BU final moment is that, as Homer mentioned earlier in the podcast, about sitting down, scheduling time to write and to script out the podcast, how sometimes the creativity starts to take over. And this is something that I have found in my life as well. It sounds counterintuitive. And when you schedule that time to be creative, you actually end up being, I find many times, more creative, more access to that process, because all of our energy is focused in that moment. There's a great saying that one of my mentors said, is that we are responsible for the energy that we bring to any experience or situation. So when we can focus our energy on one thing in the moment, that means that 100% of our focused attention and energy is on that one thing, and it can really open up the creativity aspect. So taking the time to be able to sit down and create and have that structured time is actually really, really beneficial. I just want to thank you, Homer, for reminding me of that, because I've kind of gotten away from that a little bit recently, and I just need to refocus myself there. So thank you for reminding me of that.
Wonderful.
Rara, what is your BU final moment today?
Thank you for asking. First, I'd like to thank Steve Anderson for the introduction to Homer. Steve was a previous guest on our previous podcast. Mm-hmm. And if it weren't for that connection, we wouldn't be here today with Homer. And I really appreciate the openness of introduction. And I'm grateful for the introduction to Homer, and grateful for the vibe that we have hopped onto to take it, deeper to the next level, other than just an introduction. And it really means a lot to me that we can look at people, we can listen to them, we can Zoom with them, we can connect with them where they're at based on life circumstances, but yet again, we can take it to the vibration that we wish. So being this sort of, and you always refer to me as this, Dr. Energy, as the New York, I think you use the lovely word of brash. And
it's a compliment. It's a compliment.
I know it is. I definitely know it is. And I'm owning that. And I'm owning being the New York brash woman that I am so glad that I just stepped right into it, because we wouldn't be here today if we didn't all, yourself included, and Homer, yourself as well. The gift of introduction to me is one that is extremely valuable. And thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. It is that time in our podcast. Homer, please hang out with us, and to our guests, we will post all the links for you to listen to what we're talking about. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And thank you, Homer, for joining us. I can't wait to see the reaction, or I guess hear the reaction to this podcast episode.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. See you all on the other side. Ciao.
Thank you for joining us. Sharing is caring. Tell your friends about conversations worth having on BU Network. We really appreciate your reviews, and you can do that on Apple Podcast. Thank you.
For show notes and links, go to www.b-u.network/podcasts. Connect with us via our website, www.b-u.network, and build a relationship with us. Sign up to receive information, updates, and your free video training at www.b-u.network/pro.
We're looking forward to hearing from you. And thank you for being with us. Ciao.
Ciao, babies.